Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Italy Travel Podcast. I'm Darcy Melton.
And I'm Nathaniel Malor.
And today we are talking about some off-the-beaten-path things in Florence.
We have not done an off-the-beaten-path episode in a while, and we figured now that y'all are probably traveling, this is now August that we are recording this in. I mean, y'all have maybe already come home from your trips, but we figured between the heat wave and between the fact that everybody is wondering, what do? We figured we'd talk about some off-the-beaten paths in Florence. I believe all of these are inside.
Yes.
So all of them are totally available during the middle of the hottest part of the day, basically.
Yeah, they're off the beaten path in a way that they get you off the sort of typical tourist track, perhaps, but not far outside the city.
You're still in Florence,
yes,
basically. So yeah.
Yeah, and before we get into it, we want to thank everybody who has been following and leaving reviews. If you enjoy this podcast, you can follow and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can also head on over to Patreon. Big ol' shout out to Amanda and Brian and Ariel and Austin, our Rigatoni tier members. Thank y'all so much. If you want to be super cool like them, you can also support us on Patreon or head over to the chat, which is free for anybody to participate in. You can also go to onlyabag.com to find articles written by myself and Nathaniel, and you can contact us there as well.
Thank you all so much for listening and for supporting.
Thank you all so much.
So before we actually get into it today, I was going to say 2 quick headlines. This is not the headline episode, but after we recorded the last headline episode, there, of course, is always stuff. And we wanted to mention two of them that felt more important for your trip. Mm-hmm. I think the first was, I'm sure y'all have possibly heard about the earthquake near Naples.
Yes.
It's going to be 4 days ago now, I think.
It was August 1st, I think.
Okay.
It happened.
So when this comes out on Wednesday, it'll be August 1st. It happened mostly in Pozzuoli, which is to the west of Naples. It was in the Campi Flegrei area, the Phlegraean fields, if you will, and it was the result of this these caldera, these underground filling and releasing sort of volcanic activity. But that is all to say, the reason I wanted to mention this is because weirdly yesterday, which was August 3rd, you received a couple of texts from worried family members that had just received the news 2 days later that there was an earthquake in Naples, and they're like, "You're near Naples," and which was very, very polite.
It was very kind of them.
No one in my family did.
Well, that was on me. I usually, when obviously a big thing happens, I let everybody know that I'm okay, but I didn't think about it this time for whatever reason, so that was very nice of them to reach out.
I don't tell people I'm okay during things. I'm just like, if you never hear from me again, you know why. And I will
awful.
judge you forever. But I wanted to mention that one because it was being reported as, I think with some American news sites specifically, that this was an earthquake in Naples.
A lot of the news sites that I see, I mean, the standard ones that you and I check, a lot of the English language news all over the world was saying Naples, not Pozzuoli.
It's different in the sense that it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another example, but it's like an earthquake in Long Island, not in New York City, but people are saying New York City for ease, where it's not really quite the same thing. Mm-hmm. And the other important aspect is, while there was some damage in Naples, I think some parts of flaking facade had fallen off, things like that. There was nothing major in Naples. Typically with the volcanic activity in the Campi Flegrei, my understanding is that it is very shallow. So around Pozzuoli and I mean that entire Baia area, it can be very violent. And then just outside, it won't be, because it's not tectonic, it's volcanic, and it's not necessarily an eruption. It's quite literally a raising and sinking of underground bubbles, for lack of a better word. So this just means that the real fear is when one of them explodes. And while thankfully nobody was killed in the earthquake, I think some people, I was going to say, thankfully no one was seriously injured. I believe 2 people were seriously injured. But this is just something to keep in mind. It's not Naples specifically. It's near Naples. If you are coming to Naples, if you are planning on going to Naples, this is not a sign of oh, things must be earthquake season or whatever. There's not an
Right.
earthquake season. That's
No.
crazy. I'm from a place with hurricane seasons, so I'm used to the seasons of natural disasters. So I just wanted to throw that one out there for those of you who are kind of weighing your decisions and thinking maybe you should not come to Naples now that there has been an earthquake. It's not in Naples. It's near Naples. This is fairly common in terms of natural disasters. And
These kinds of earthquakes are quite common in that area in the Campi Flegrei.
and you don't really feel them that far out. I think Naples felt them, maybe Capri, but like Amalfi Coast, I would highly doubt felt anything, just given how localized they tend to be. And then the other one was I'm sure y'all have heard about this one too, is then in Ceuta. I'm for
I think
sure.
it's Ceuta. Yeah.
Ceuta. My head is like Chuta, which is the Italian pronunciation, which is not the remotely Spanish pronunciation, but it's the Spanish autonomous city in northern Africa, on the, like, I guess it's on the border of Morocco and then Mediterranean on the other side. I'm sure y'all have heard about the recent flood of immigrants between Morocco and essentially Spain. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because maybe some of you have already heard that Italy has sort of suspended their Schengen zone controls with Spain, which simply means that for you as a tourist, if you're coming through Spain, whether for a trip, but also if you're taking like Iberian Airways, which I believe if you're flying like British Airways, for example, their partner
Okay.
is Iberia. I don't know who else it would be in the States. I think that might be American in the States. So if you're flying American Airlines, you can either switch in London and usually switch to a British Airways flight, or you might switch in Madrid for Iberian Airways. I had to pause it slightly as the school children outside the front door decided to all scream in unison. As
They're all okay. They're
yes,
happy.
They're all fine. It's just walking through town. What are you going to do with this great acoustics? So yes, that is simply to say, if you're coming through Madrid, you are going to have to hit the EES system in Madrid, the entry-exit system in Madrid, which again, add an extra hour or two to your transfer time. But once you arrive in Italy, you will also have to go through another passport control, which is atypical. And this is apparently just for the month of August.
Okay.
This is how long they have, they mostly being the Minister of the Interior, Antonio Tajani, famous for making it very difficult for anybody to reclaim their Italian citizenship. And it's unclear at the moment if this will be extended beyond August or not. But for now, if you're coming in August, you might have to, you definitely will have to go through additional passport control if you are flying through Spain. If you are listening to this and you are a citizen of the European Union, you hold 2 passports, or you're just living if you're living in Spain, you don't actually have to go through this. This is only for people who do not hold European citizenship, not specifically, but in this case, the important ones are Spanish and Italian citizenship.
So for an example, I'm not an Italian citizen. You are. I only have 1 citizenship so far. So I would have to go through an extra passport check if I'm coming from Spain to Italy.
Correct.
You would not, because you have dual citizenship.
Yes,
in Europe.
correct.
Okay.
And then last note is just for those of you who are maybe going to be flying through other countries, France, for example, they have strengthened their border, their land border with Spain. It's a little bit ambiguous what that means, but in case a lot of other countries are looking at what Italy has done, and those who are not decreeing it and saying this is a terrible idea, stop doing that, please, are saying this is a great idea, we should also do that. So those countries, I think Finland is one of them. Netherlands, I believe, is another one. There's a handful of countries. I apologize, I don't have the list in front of me, but they are all looking at this and considering doing something similar. So before you fly to Italy, if you are flying through another country, is the most important thing. The reason I mentioned Netherlands is Amsterdam is a big...
that's a big hub.
A big hub. If you're flying Delta, for example, Delta will switch to KLM in Amsterdam, or it'll switch to Air France in Charles de Gaulle in Paris. So if both of those go the same way that Italy has gone, then flying through Spain in general will become kind of a pain. So just keep that in mind as you plan your trip, as you fly, as you
Just means extra passport checks.
It just means extra passport checks. It's not a big deal. It's mostly that it will take you more time once you enter Italy. So if you have a train or a bus or something like that, potentially even a connecting flight, but not on the same ticket. If you are flying into Rome and then taking like EasyJet down to Palermo, for example, just add some more time onto all of this so you don't miss anything.
Okay.
And yes, I know this is a very surface level way of looking at a very unrelated news story, but because just next to it was the sort of Italy closes border with Spain, I just wanted to explain what that might mean in terms of, well, your trip.
Yeah, in practicalities.
Yes, exactly. So that's not the point of today's episode, even though we spent 10 minutes on it.
It's important, though. Those are important things to talk about.
I thought so, especially because it couldn't happen around our headline episode, you know? I mean, come on, earthquakes, like figure out how to time it before Tuesday. I am obviously kidding. So what is our first thing on the list today?
So, as we said at the top of the episode, we are talking about off the beaten path things inside of Florence. This first one I'm going to talk about, it is off the beaten path, and a lot of the places sort of in this category that you can visit will be not highly trafficked. They're not going to be super busy areas, but it is a sort of well-known attraction.
Okay.
So that is all to say. We are talking about the very many Last Supper. I was going to say paintings. They're not paintings. Most of them are frescoes. The very many Last Suppers that exist in Florence.
Interesting.
I think there are about 14 Last Suppers around Florence.
It's a very famous scene, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people, and I'll tell you why. So these are called cenacolo. One is a cenacolo.
Okay.
Many are cenacoli.
Okay.
And these were usually in refectories, which is kind of the dining hall for monks and nuns in a monastery.
Interesting. It's a Okay. It makes sense because down in our...
That's true. They have like a modern one.
Yeah. Well...
A contemporary, I should say.
Yes.
It
is.
In one of the churches, it's a monastery, right?
Is it a monastery? I was trying to figure out the name for it. It's St. Francis. I guess it's a monastery.
Yeah, I don't know that people don't live there full time. That it's kind of like a brother monastery to another one in another town. But I think it is a monastery, and there is a Last Supper in the big dining area.
It is a beautiful painting.
And if you continue to hear children screaming in the background, everybody is totally fine. There seem to be many camp tours coming down our street today and
Amazing.
Screaming.
There's nobody that lives in this town, and yet all the children have decided to visit on the same day.
Yeah.
Just a balmy, what is it, Tuesday in August.
Yeah, it's good. It's cute. So, but they are screaming. So just want to let you know that everything is fine, and we apologize. So let's talk about the oldest of the cenacoli in Florence.
I love that.
This one is called Cenacolo di Santa Croce, and it was created in the mid-1300s by Taddeo Gaddi, and you can see it in the Santa Croce Museum, and it is also called the Santa Croce Opera. Opera just means, it doesn't mean show. I think of it as show. It means...
work or no?
Work, yes.
Work, okay.
Thank you. So this one is 11 euros per person, but there are free days coming up. So on August 15th, September 14th, 26th, 27th, and lots of other dates, all of those will be in the description, are free days to see this oldest one in Florence.
Can I ask two brief questions?
Please.
First, what is the Last Supper painting? For those of listening who might not know.
Of course. Okay, so the Last Supper painting is Jesus sitting at a very long table with a bunch of his friends, the disciples.
Okay. Just honestly, a couple guys that wanted to come to dinner that night.
And also Mary Magdalene, I think. So that is the Last Supper. It is depicting the final supper that Jesus had before he was crucified.
One might say the Last Supper.
Yes.
And is any of, like, the other question was more about where is the famous one? Like the Last Supper.
Yes. So if you have seen the Last Supper, perhaps in history books, or if you took art history.
Or perhaps famously seen in the Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
The Dan Brown classic.
So it was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, and it is in Milan.
Ah, okay.
And two of the Last Suppers that I'm going to mention today, as well as several of the ones that you can see in Florence, are older than his.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, so he was not the original.
That's fair.
He just painted one of the ones people tend to really like.
Well, I think being Da Vinci had something probably to do with it, and then the rest of it was more, I imagine, just nice, I guess.
It is, though, once you look at so everybody has their own interpretation of what this looks like, and obviously as artistic styles changed and tastes of different times changed, mostly the background essentially changed in these different depictions. Of course, the sort of style of painting, like people's faces look a little bit different, or people are wearing different things. But one thing I noticed is that the backgrounds change. And so if you look at some of these early ones, it's really more two-dimensional in a way,
okay.
where they become more three-dimensional. They look like almost the trompe-l'oeil.
Okay.
I can't ever say that right. So they'll make the space look bigger, like they're actually sitting in a three-dimensional space. And Da Vinci's is a good example of that because they look like they're in a room. There are windows behind them, things like that. So it's interesting to see how that whole scene changes throughout the years with the same subject.
I'd be curious too of like the balance between something that is like, are they just at a tavern, versus someone's house versus like what would it, like we kind of already know what it might have been like, some 2,000 years ago, just in terms of, it's like earthenware and stuff like that. It's like we know what a tavern looked like in 2000, give or take. I mean, everybody films in Matera anyway, anytime they want to do a Passion of Christ-esque movie. But I'm always curious too, like how like, it's like we're drinking out of gold goblets, or are we drinking out of, broken earthenware mugs because that would have been more appropriate at the time.
Yeah.
But the background's always interesting. Like, are there other people? Is it just the 13 or 14 or however? How many people are in this painting?
I think it's 13.
I know only about this painting from art history. I know none of this painting from the Bible. So I am learning alongside you all, dear listeners.
So it's 13 people plus Jesus.
Okay.
Right? In the painting?
I'm learning. I don't know. Right.
I believe that is the case. It's funny how you can see something so many times and have learned about it in different ways in different places, and then completely forget how many people were in this painting.
I feel that.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, when they name the paintings, how like some they'll name like Mary and the 4 cherubs, and it's like, I know how many people are in that painting. I think 5, unless they forgot to count someone.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
And speaking of how many people are in paintings, in fact, one note I want to make on this oldest Last Supper painting that you can see in Florence is that it's on a wall, so it's a fresco. It's still existing on the same wall, I believe, as it always has been. And it's not just the Last Supper. It has several other bits around it. So it's the Last Supper on the bottom, and then up through the center, it sort of looks like a tree, and there are many people gathered around the tree, and then there are other little depictions around it. So it's an interesting version of this painting that I feel like a lot of us have seen.
That is interesting, though. Yeah. And I'm wondering, you mentioned obviously it's on the same wall, and I think sometimes they find like frescoes behind frescoes, which I'm always, I mean, we were just talking about the one down here, the monastery down here that they've basically repainted all in the 80s. And then when like later, I think they were renovating and they were taking away the painting and this sort of facade and all that sort of, what is that stuff that you...
It's not intonaco.
I know, that's the Italian, right? Stucco.
Yes.
And they were taking all this off of stucco, and they found all the original frescoes that they literally only covered up some 50 or 60 years ago. So I just find it fascinating. I'm curious to know, like, because I mean, at the time it would have been, hey, our whatever dining hall paintings looking a little sad. Get one of the new young artists come in and zhuzh it up a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Or we don't really like that story anymore.
Exactly.
This is a big story, but sometimes it will be not the Last Supper. It will be a fresco of a different story, and sometimes tastes change and they want to change it up. There's a very old church up in town, and I can't remember what the frescoes depict, but I know that they were little holes were kind of knocked out of them, and then they were covered in stucco, and those were rediscovered as well. But now these incredibly old fragments of a fresco have little holes in them now.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least you can see some of what they were because the stucco's been taken away.
So I'd be curious to know what's if anything is under these, or if it's just this is it and it always has been this one.
That's a good question. We'll all have to go see them and ask the tour guides.
that's the option.
Yeah. So another one of these Last Suppers that I would suggest seeing is the Cenacolo di San Marco, which is by Domenico Ghirlandaio, I think is how you say his name.
Okay.
And this one is from 1482. This one and the previous one are both earlier than Leonardo da Vinci's. The last one I'll talk about is a little bit newer. So this is actually the second sort of version of this painting by Domenico Ghirlandaio. There's a previous one that was made like 2 years earlier.
Okay.
So the slightly earlier version is in the Museum of the Cenacolo di Onisanti, but I recommend seeing this one from 1482 in the Museum of San Marco because there are several other frescoes in this building, so you're not just seeing the one.
Okay.
It's got an art museum sort of thing going on. And
Interesting.
yes, so this one, like I said, is also older than Da Vinci's, which is an interesting note because, like I said earlier, people were, instead of just painting the sort of two-dimensional style, people were expanding these paintings to make them look like these people are sitting in a room. And this is a good example of that. So essentially in this fresco, Jesus and the disciples are sitting in a room, and you can also see behind them, there's like a garden, there's a peacock on the wall, there's lots of different sort of exotic animals sort of in the
Okay.
background. So it's like a very nice vibe. It's a room I would want to have lunch in as well, or dinner. I can't remember what time of day it was supposed to be.
Oh, okay. So they're like any meal, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful looking room. So it's an interesting way of seeing it. Like, obviously, Leonardo da Vinci wasn't the first person to invent this subject matter. He wasn't the first person to put them in a space rather than make the whole scene two-dimensional. So this one's a really cool one to see, I think.
And when you say two-dimensional, is it just they would have a flat color background on some of these other ones?
Yeah, it's more like instead of giving the table dimension so you can kind of see the food or something on
it's
the
just a
table.
flat line.
It's just a flat line, or you can't see like the ceiling of a room. It's more just like you said, here's a flat color. So it looks like people sitting at a table, but it's a little rudimentary is not the word. It's just not, there's not so much depth in the painting, you know.
That's always, I mean, this is not an art podcast, but it always fascinates me because we just talked about the Trump oil method in the Pompeii episode and how to basically effectively do this, you need to create depth, you need a vanishing point, you need all lines to converge on one point in the distance. And then obviously stopped being a thing. Like, I mean, a lot of medieval art, for example, that just went straight out the window. And Renaissance, one of the I guess not the reasons the Italian, the Florentine Renaissance is famous, but they rediscovered this sort of technique of the vanishing point. But like you said this was painted, which was the first one?
Which first one?
The oldest one.
I think that's 1300s.
Okay, maybe that is a little older than I thought. Okay, because this one that's older than Da Vinci's, you said it was painted in
1482. 1480 and 1482, they're two very similar ones by the same artist.
Okay, because that is only, I believe, Da Vinci's is...
He's like 1485?
1495, yeah.
1495, okay.
So, okay, but like the vanishing point thing, it wasn't... Yeah, exactly. Well, that, it's... I'm just thinking the sort of the evolution isn't huge, so it's not that art took this massive leap forward in 10 years. I feel like it's just some people were not doing certain techniques and others were.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's personal taste. I think it was also probably up to the patrons, the people who asked the painting to be made, what their tastes were and what they wanted to see.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So the final one that I want to talk about is the Last Supper by Plautilla Nelli, which is at the Museum of Santa Maria Novella. She is the first known female artist to paint a large-scale Last Supper.
Oh, wow.
And when I say large scale, all of these paintings that we've been talking about, all of the Last Suppers that you will likely see are large scale. Think fresco size, like they're painting on a wall.
Like multiple yards or meters?
Yes.
Okay.
Not like a little painting you could hold in your hands.
Okay.
So hers is, in fact, not a fresco. It's actually an oil painting, which...
Interesting. Oil on wall?
No, oil on canvas.
Oil on canvas. Okay.
Which is really cool because, in fact, it ended up saving the painting later in the painting's life because Nelli was a nun of the Dominican monastery of Santa Caterina, and this painting was painted in 1568 for the refectory refectory. That's a hard word to say. At the church. And later, that monastery was torn down. And if it had been is it a monastery? No. Where are nuns? Nuns are in a convent.
Convent. I was like a nunnery, perhaps.
So the convent was later torn down. And if this had been a fresco, it would have not survived the destruction of this convent. But because it was an oil painting, it was able to be moved. And that's like the only reason that we still have it and know it existed.
That's actually really neat then.
Yeah. And you can go see this in the Basilica of the Santa Maria Novella, and it is $7.50 per person.
And for what it's worth, the Basilica of the Santa Maria Novella is the church across from the main train station in Florence, and it is a superbly beautiful church if you have time. I know that people like the Duomo. Inside the Duomo is a bit meh. It's a little lackluster, right? They put all their money into the dome and put no money into the, furniture. But
Furniture.
Well, it's like you go to the St. Peter's Basilica and you're like, that's crazy on the outside. And you go inside and you're like, what was I talking about?
Right.
Everything is gold.
Yes.
I feel like
crazy, and that everything you look at is something new.
Yeah. And the Duomo is the exact opposite. They're just like all the money on the outside, nothing inside, which is nice. It's very, pleasant. But Santa Maria Novella is quite lovely inside.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't know if I mentioned, so the Last Supper, the Cenacolo di San Marco, the one with the peacock in it, and they kind of look like they're in a garden.
Classic peacock.
If you want to see that one, that is also €11 to enter. I just wanted to make sure everybody had a good understanding of how much it costs to see each of these. And if you're looking to do this on a budget, I don't think any are free to see in Florence, any of the Last Suppers, but several seem to be in places run by, I think, the Ministry of Culture. I have a link in the description. And so several are just €5 per person.
But the first one you mentioned, you said there's a couple of free days coming up.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That
good
one
point.
would be
In
free.
general, they're not free, but that one does have free days coming up.
Okay. Very
yes,
cool.
Thank you. Good note.
Of course.
And all of these links will be in the description. I know it's a lot that we've kind of gone through quite quickly.
But as you also mentioned at the top of the episode, these are great places to get out of the heat. Some of them are air conditioned. Some of them are just in churches, so they're a little bit cool naturally.
Exactly.
So if you are looking to get out of the heat, and the places like the Uffizi or the Pitti Palace are just swamped with people, these are great alternatives that you still get to see some lovely art, or at least a pre-vanishing point art.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
It's a fun, slightly off the beaten path place to stay out of crowds, stay a little bit cool, and also to kind of take things slow, I feel, because you can move between all of them, and it's just a more relaxed way of seeing some interesting art.
100%.
And moving on from the Last Suppers, another interesting site that you can see is the Hospital of the Innocents. And I had never heard about this before. It is a fascinating place. Today, it's mostly a museum of Renaissance art by several different famous painters, including Sandro Botticelli. Also, who knew that Botticelli's first name was Sandro? I did not.
I was going to say, I think some people did, but
I'm sure some people did. It's a cool first name. Also, Piero di Cosimo and Domenico Ghirlandaio, who we just talked about. Yeah. So two of the most famous works that you can see are The Adoration of the Magi by Domenico Ghirlandaio and Madonna with Child by Botticelli.
Two people in that painting.
Yeah, exactly.
So easy. Name everybody in the painting. You can never forget.
Is that how I should start naming my paintings?
100%.
This thing. One person.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
So one fascinating fact about the modern version of this building is that it's also currently home to the UNICEF Innocenti Research Center, which is a research center that supports children's rights and works with UNICEF.
That's kind of great. Okay. Wait, but can you... That's not something you can visit.
I don't think so.
That's like an operating business or whatever.
Yes, it is a very much an operating business who does a lot of important work all the time.
Or nonprofit, but yeah, okay.
Yes. I just had no idea.
But they have a museum? Is that like, so these are how paintings housed in a museum also attached, or?
These are, all the paintings are in what was an orphanage originally.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. So this building, before we get into the orphanage part, let's talk about the building. Briefly, if you research this on your own, they will talk, everything I found talks so much about this building. I could not figure out a way to talk about this architecture in a way that wouldn't sound very dry.
Beautiful.
So we're just going to say that it was designed by Filippo Brunelleschi, the quote-unquote, I know, father of Italian Renaissance architecture.
I mean, dome guy is probably maybe more to the point, but yeah, father of Italian Renaissance architecture.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I say I'm not going to go into all of the architecture stuff, so many people will, and articles will. To me, it looks very classic Italian.
It was early work, right? It was before he got crazy with the domes.
Yeah, well, there are no domes. This one is
That's what I'm
famous
saying.
because it has arches as
Okay.
what do you walk through?
Archway.
No, when it's a hallway that has arches on one side, but it's a covered.
Portico?
Yes,
Okay.
sort of a portico situation with arches around, and it's quite well known for that.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And so let's now get into sort of the history more of what happened inside of this building. So it was called the Ospedale degli Innocenti in local Tuscan dialect. That is the Hospital of the Innocents.
In Tuscan dialect or Florentine dialect?
Everything I read said Tuscan.
Okay. I'm only curious because obviously Florentine dialect became Italian. So it's interesting that it's spedale, not ospedale.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it
Interesting.
was an earlier version or because of the order, the religious order that ran it. Maybe they used the Tuscan dialect. That's a good question.
That's it. Yeah. Could be just they like the idea of an O at the beginning instead of an S, and it rolled off the tongue better.
Yeah. So there we go. So it was the first orphanage in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is when. Do you know when it was built or
It
started?
opened in 1445.
Interesting.
And I'm sure there were other situations happening to take care of children, but apparently in the 1400s, there was, I mean, probably much like today, there were so many children who could not be cared for by their birth parents.
Yeah.
And there was a real crisis, essentially. So this was a really important building and a really important orphanage to have to take care of these children.
Do you know who started it?
Great question.
Well, I mean, if it's the religious order, it makes sense. I just didn't know if they were backed by like it's always like the Medici's threw money at this thing.
Yeah, so it was a lot of the Medici's, the famous big families in Florence, but also the Silk Guild was the sort of major money backer of this situation. And it seems
Interesting.
that all of the guilds, or at least all of the wealthy guilds in Florence, would have a philanthropic side.
It's like the Rotary Club.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and this was their big philanthropic undertaking.
that is really cool. I hope. I mean, I assume it's
Yeah,
cool.
I want to say, so obviously this place was taking care of a lot of children, and there were certainly things, and it was open for a very long time. So I'm sure there are things that went on there which were not on the up and up, but it does seem like largely they did their best to take care of these children and give them the life that they absolutely would not have been able to have without this situation.
Very cool then.
So just 3 years after opening in 1448, the hospital was taking care of 260 children.
Oh my gosh.
In fact, I think it was just 10 days after opening that the first foundling was left there, which is a baby who is left somewhere for someone else to take care of.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like many other, I want to say, I don't know if this was something that happened after this orphanage was opened, but we've heard about many people who've have family members who are foundlings, and there was a little area where you could put the baby in a little, like a sink shaped sort of
Sure.
thing. It's almost like a little basket, and you would ring the bell and someone would come and get your baby. And they always had a situation where whoever was dropping off the baby didn't have to be seen, because it was to leave your baby somewhere was seen as something shameful. So they wanted to make sure that whoever was dropping off the baby didn't feel any shame around it, that they didn't have to be seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And
I
so,
honestly always imagined as like of a book drop-off situation, but that not like a sliding tube or
Right.
anything, but just like you put the baby in a drawer and you slide the drawer
well,
in.
yeah,
and
I think so.
something
So the
like that.
early versions were that sort of like a little, not a bowl, like a baskety sort of situation. And then later versions were more of you put the baby, again, not in a drawer, but a baby-shaped receptacle. And then you kind of turn it and then you ring
yeah,
the bell.
like
So that way, if it were like wintertime or something, the baby's not out in the cold.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And did
They're
I
way
say?
more whimsical in my head, I think, all because of, TV show or movies like Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah.
It's not a serious thing in my head, I realize, which is probably horrific. It's more just like, oh, that's whimsical. And then
And then that baby goes on to have a wonderful life.
exactly, that's 100% in my head. I'm like, this is how I maintain sanity.
Yeah. So did I say that the first foundling was dropped off there 10 days after it opened? Okay. And so then by 1448, there were 260 children living there. And by 1560, they were caring for more than 1,320 children.
Wow, how big? I mean, like, did they expand or did they just?
I don't know. It does seem like quite a large building. So
Okay.
I'm sure there were expansions. In fact, much later in its history, they added a wing for so children who grew up there. Obviously, boys would, when they grew up to be men, they would go off and do things. They had many more rights than women did, and the girls who grew up were given the choice for most of the history, I believe, of this orphanage to either get married or to become a nun. Which,
Awful, but okay.
unfortunately, that was pretty much what you could expect being a woman anywhere at this time. So then later they did add a wing to this building for people for women who did not want to be nuns or get married. And I think they just ended up working at the orphanage in some capacity.
Okay.
But it was sort of expanded. Hey, you can live here. You don't have to get married or be a nun. You could just live here and work here, I
Oh,
believe.
wow. Okay.
Yes. So by 1681, there were more than 3,000 children in the hospital's care.
1681?
Yes.
No. Wow. Okay.
1681. Yes.
That is like just I know I don't know how to. That is larger than the population of our town. So I mean by 3. So that is quite wild. That there. It's a lot of people.
Yeah,
A lot of
it
kids.
really was. And so, of course, babies were taken in here. And as I said, so boys and girls were taught differently and then, raised a little bit differently. It was the 1400s at this point. So let's talk about in the beginning, the way that they ran things. So boys were taught to read and write, and girls were taught how to cook and sew and other things like that.
Okay.
I know, 1400s of it all whenever it first began. Children could be adopted, but most of them were not.
Makes sense. Yeah.
However, often children were fostered to wealthy or well-to-do families, and then in the beginning of their lives. So if they were dropped off as babies, there were many wet nurses who worked at this Hospital of the Innocents. So that was a woman who would breastfeed the baby, and then later children would be potentially given to a family to take care of them until they were 7, and then they were taken back to the Hospital of the Innocents, ostensibly for schooling.
Wow. Okay.
That is my understanding. So, like I said before, the boys, when they grew up to be men, they just went off and lived their lives, and girls who did want to get married were given a dowry by the Hospital of the Innocents.
Interesting.
Yeah. And obviously, if they didn't want to get married, they could become nuns or then work for the hospital. And it was largely, like I said, supported by the Silk Guild, which was one of the wealthiest in Florence at the time, as well as other major families.
Yeah.
And then because it was operating for so long, they did go through times of tumult when I think more children had to be and older children had to be placed with wealthier families, and then it came back, and there was some ebb and flow with the whole situation.
I'm curious also how the plagues affected, because obviously Florence was quite badly hit by the plagues, plural. And I'm curious if it led to, I assume, more children, just in the sense of, because you were talking about if kids can't be taken care of. I'm wondering how many of them were literally there's nobody left in their family kind of situation.
That's a really good question. I also wonder if they, during the time of the major plague in Florence, if they took the children out into the country somewhere to be safe, or if they all stayed kind of quarantined in the Hospital of the Innocents. I'm not sure.
So but there's now art there.
Yes, there's now art there. It mostly functions as an art museum. One interesting, sad but interesting thing you can see is that many parents and people who dropped off their babies would leave a token with them, and they would break it in half. So they could come back and basically prove hey, because the intention with a lot of these
an
babies,
actual token then.
yeah,
Not like a
thing.
teddy bear or something.
It could be. I mean,
Who
probably
gives
not
me
a
half
teddy
a teddy
bear.
bear? That's awful.
Well, it was probably not a teddy bear. Usually, it could be a coin. It could
Okay.
be an heirloom, perhaps. But they would. I believe the point was because a lot of parents want to come back. They're like,
Yes.
I can't give you the best life right now, but I'll come back for you, was a lot of people's intention. So they would leave the baby with half of something and come back with the other half to be like, hey, this is my baby.
That makes sense.
And unfortunately, not everybody was able to come back for their child. So you can now see a lot of the little tokens in the museum as well as a bunch of art.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, macabre, but also really quite cool at
Yeah.
a certain level.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, this was sad. Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, again, it's old history, but it really does seem like people did their best for these children, and patrons saw that there was a crisis, and they didn't.
True.
I mean, they didn't want babies to not be without a home. So it really does seem like people were trying their best to take care of these children.
No, that makes, a lot of sense, especially given the time period. And it's cool that the spark of humanity was somewhat alive and well.
Yeah, and that spark, that sort of legacy continues with the UNICEF Innocenti research project. So it just seems like a lovely sort of full circle situation. And you can go visit the museum, as we said, for €9 per person.
Well,
And that has been an ad for the Hospital of the Innocents. Not really. I just want you to be prepared for what you're going to see and what you're going to pay.
that is really cool, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for teaching us about the Last Supper and about the Hospital of the Innocents.
You're welcome.
I've learned a lot today.
And in our next episode, we're talking more about off the beaten path places, or we're talking about a pharmacy and what else?
It'll be a surprise.
Oh, okay. Mine's
not
not a
actually a
surprise.
surprise, but-
I'm talking about a pharmacy.
I know what we're talking about. I thought it might be more fun for a
I
surprise.
like it.
Museums. We're talking about museums in the next episode.
Okay.
And we hope to see y'all there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for listening. Tanti abbracci.